to the next portion of our discussion, which is some budget background. So
Yep.
take it away, Catherine.
Well, I was actually going to give it to Howard.
All right, take it away, Howard.
Okay. Well, earlier this year, as you will remember, you asked that we kick off the budget deliberation by telling a story or pointing out challenges that we face that will have some bearing on our budget priorities. At least that's the way I remember it. And I'm going to talk tonight about what I have outlined as some challenges facing Cape Elizabeth, many of which have little to do with budget, honestly, and little to nothing about the budget that will be presented to you in the next couple of weeks. Because quite honestly, when I look at the budget that we've been working on hard, we started talking about this budget last October. And we started listing what we thought would be useful and important to move the district ahead based on input from a number of meetings with teachers, with administrators, with the board summer retreat, with the report that came in from the accreditation for the high school. There's lots of ideas came forward, and we started listing these things about, well, this would be useful. That we could add this, and it would make a difference. And we stopped at some point and looked at the list. It was not a complete list. It was just part of a serious list of things that we thought would make a difference. And it was way beyond what you would find to be acceptable for good reason, and what the voters would be willing and able to support, again, for good reason. When we factored in salary increases and benefits, we added that as new money into the budget as a holding spot for some kind of a raise for our employees and projected increases for benefits. We didn't have a lot of room left. That's the reality. And when we aligned with staffing needs based on your board policy related to class size, teacher-student ratio, and when we looked at obvious needs like we need more help in cleaning the schools and the community center. We're just short of people. I mean, I know it's not very exciting, but it's important that we have buildings that are attractive and presentable and that we're proud of. And we're shy. We're shy of basic staff in cleaning schools. We need some basic support staff to support our teachers, and especially at Pond Cove. We have fewer people supporting teachers at Pond Cove than any of the schools that we compared ourselves with. That's it. So quickly, we realized that all those other things, and you're going to get the list. You're going to see a list of very interesting ideas, and you can decide if you want to go with any or all of it. You won't go with all of it, with any of it, or if you don't agree with the list that we've come up with, that's your business. But it's going to come in well below what would be there if we weren't concerned about the reality of what's a reasonable increase. So the challenges, I mean, those challenges are real, but there are other challenges that I think I want to be clear with you that I think need need to be sure that they're articulated and explained if there are any questions about them. So I'm going to kind of walk through some things I think of overall as challenges. Some of them are universal, and many of them are very specific to Cape Elizabeth. So, you know, it's interesting. I looked today at the ad online for hiring your new superintendent, and it talks about that you have a vision for Cape Elizabeth, and you're hoping to find somebody who shares that vision. And the vision is described as exceptional and innovative education. I will point out that another district has an opening for superintendent, and they use the same words. So I don't know if they plagiarized Cape Elizabeth or somebody else's words, but I like the words. I like the word exceptional and innovative. And whosever words they are, I think that those would serve Cape Elizabeth well, and it would be something that we think about at budget time. I mean, and I guess tonight's lead in this presentation was thinking about those very issues. But I think that you and the community as a whole expect and want exceptional and innovative schools. I'm not sure that, I don't believe that we would say we could check those both off as being exactly where we want them. I think there's room to work on being exceptional, and there's work to be worked on in terms of being innovative. And I don't think all of it requires more money. So the challenges facing Cape Elizabeth, I think one of them is to inspire your students and to inspire your teachers. I think that was the first thing that came to my mind, inspiration. And to not lose that to maintain it all the years that they either are here as students or as teachers. I would feel that would be very, that would fall in exceptional and innovative. That being inspired. I'm not using the word engaged. I like the word inspired. So you've got a wide range of students, and they're like in a family, they're different and they're complicated and they're exceptional, and to recognize that and to think about that in the way that we provide and present learning opportunities, I think falls under the umbrella of a challenge. You've got a diverse faculty. You've got people with amazing degrees from, I won't, there are some really interesting people that work here. I mean, with really impressive backgrounds. I mean, I want to give some examples, but I think I won't. But it just knocks me out when I meet people and I'm going, oh my God, she's teaching second grade. You know, what an amazing, I mean, I guess everywhere I go in all the schools, I meet these really highly capable, impressive teachers you've got. I mean, but they're, you know, some of them are at the beginning of their career, some are kind of mid-career, some are like, you know, close to retirement. They're in different places. Some have babies, some have grandchildren, some, you know, I mean, there's just, so to acknowledge and to think about how do we inspire and have them feel like I'm excited about coming here, and I'm feeling like they are doing what they can to meet me, and I'm doing what I can to meet them. Right? That acknowledgement of that range of your teachers, I think, is something that is an ongoing challenge. You can't just say, well, that's our faculty. Well, no, it's much more complicated than that. I think that another challenge is to beat back this general feeling out there of fear, of negativity, of uncertainty, of turmoil, and it's only gone up in the last week. It's just gone up, and I think it's a serious issue. I think that for children, believe me, they're watching this stuff. They're reading this. I mean, they're trying to figure out, and so are your teachers and your staff. How does this work? What's the world like? Where's it headed? There's so much. I think that we have to be careful that we don't feed into this feeling of anxiety and negativity and unkindness and suspicion. You know what I'm talking about. I think it's a serious, serious issue that we've got to be paying attention to and be purposeful in reassuring everybody that, you know what, we're going to get through this and we're going to be fine. But you don't just say that and say, "Hatta boy." It's much more complicated. But that's a challenge. It's a serious challenge. The political winds are they have shifted. I think that for teachers, and for your administrators and for you, looking at the state of Maine and where are we headed as in public education. We've been through so many commissioners. We've got a governor who has been, in my opinion, very critical and unfair to public education and to teachers and to principals. We've got a new possible federal Secretary of Education who is no friend of public education. I'm just saying it flat out, okay? This causes those of us in public education uncertainty. It causes concern. It causes angst. So we don't have a sense of where we're going as a state, and state impacts us. We don't know where this is going to land on a federal priority and what's going to happen with public education. I don't know. But believe me, it's a challenge. I'm dropping things under the challenge, okay? That's a challenge that we've got to pay attention to. I think that this whole idea of extended learning opportunities is, using a phrase that was mentioned earlier by Jeff, it's an opportunity. I think there's lots that we ought to be doing and thinking about under extended learning opportunities. It hasn't been tapped nearly to the degree that it should. And I don't just mean at high school. I think PATHS, the vocational program for our students, is not utilized nearly. That's a challenge. Convincing more families and more students that this is an exciting opportunity for them that has lots of appeal and potential, and to be excited about that, I just think that would be, I used to do, among other things, I've done different things. One thing I've done is be a carpenter. Like a carpenter. And I've taught, because I'm a carpenter, I was given a credential to teach carpentry. These fractions up here tonight that you're looking at, if any of the kids that were working with me on building a chicken coop, they'd get the fractions. They'd have those things flat. And so, I just think that we need to be thinking that there are a variety of places and ways to learn things that are important, but I think that we haven't done enough. It's a challenge to try and reassure people that it's a viable, good possibility for their children. I think gifted and talented is a challenge for us. We talk a lot about, and maybe not nearly enough about, children that are struggling learners. There are struggling learners also, and they come to us in different ways. We have children that are, in fact, exceptional in certain ways that I'm not sure we're doing nearly enough to. We may be marginally identifying them, and then it goes south real fast. I don't know what we're doing beyond that. That's a challenge we've got to take head on. I think the one about proficiency-based diplomas, it's a big deal. I commend the faculty and the administration to be working on that. The high school, boy, it's in front of them. It's serious. They're taking it seriously, but that's a challenge to get that right. Related to that, the whole issue about reporting and ranking or whatever they're going to do, student achievement and proficiency. I think curriculum alignment is a challenge that we have facing us. I think reducing stress is something that we've got to continue to take seriously. It didn't fall on deaf ears for a lot of us the other night at the last high school board meeting where a student, God love her, first sentence was, we're under a lot of stress. And I get it that there's stress in life. I get that there's nothing wrong with stress. I get that there's good stress and all. I mean, okay, that's fine. But there's also such a thing as unnecessary stress. There's such a thing as too much stress. And we need to help our community, our school community, realize that enough's enough of that. And let's be sure that, we're taking that seriously. We've got an increased number of students, I think, in our schools today, percentage-wise, maybe in numbers as well, that have complicated needs. I mean, these are children that have got health needs that are for them and their families complicated. We have behavioral needs. We have psychological needs. We've got learning needs. I mean, there's a lot. Maybe it's because we know more today. I don't know what it is, but we've got it makes the work of teachers and principals and nurses and guidance and social workers that much more difficult and challenging to try to recognize and to serve those complicated needs. It takes a lot of energy and time, and it's exhausting emotionally sometimes for everybody. But that's a challenge. I'd say our math curriculum, I will go no further. We beat that into the ground tonight. But it's a challenge. I'm going to just leave it at that. I think reading proficiency, I'm not saying we've got a problem. I'm going to say this. I think we've got to challenge ourselves to say that we need to really do all we can to get students to read at a level of proficiency of third grade in third grade, by third grade. And if they aren't, that we double down. And then we put in not more of the same, but additional support to get them to grade level really soon, as soon as we can after third grade, or else they are really going to be in trouble. They're going to be so far, they're going to be in some deep water by the time they get to high school. And it's a very painful place to be, to not be literate. So I'm just saying we've got to really stress literacy and the support for that as early as we can. And so that's a challenge to really hone in on that, I think. We're a high-achieving school district, to say the very least. One of the challenges that comes with that, again, I was asked to talk about challenges. I recognize that there are a lot of blessings and wonderful things about Cape Elizabeth. I'm just honing in on the word challenge. So I could run you another couple of lists if you want those too, but I'm just sticking with that word right now. So I think that being a high-achieving district, there's the risk of being reluctant to take risks. I think you've got to beat that down. I mean, I think that there's a concern about, well, wait a minute, if we do that, what might that do to our test scores, or what might the parents think, or what might, well, this isn't the way it was done when I was in school. I mean, I just say that in some communities, when you say we're going to try something new, they would say, great, let's see how that works. I think in some districts that are high achieving, the feeling is, wait a minute, that might do some harm, and so let's think about that for quite a while. So I encourage us to not let that happen. I would not be overly concerned about preserving a reputation. I'd be more inclined to creating a new reputation. And I said earlier, I'll be quick about it this time. There's a risk of having too much emphasis placed on testing. And I do just caution us to not let that happen. Another challenge I think that we have is this so-called single town philosophy. Is that what it's called?
One town concept.
One town concept. Thank you. One town concept, that's interesting, but I'm concerned that I'm not confident that it's fully meeting the needs of the school. And there are at least three examples of that come into play. One is this buildings and grounds arrangement, and transportation, while it's not a town concern, it still falls under that responsibility of here in terms of responsibility of jobs of the buildings and grounds. I just am not at all sure that if we were to staff just our three schools, that we would ever have this configuration. And to me, it begs review. And I am encouraging a conversation with the town manager over that. But that's one. You also share your business office, and you also share your technology. And there may be other shared arrangements that I'm not aware of. But I really think that that arrangement, there's room for improvement there. And then I think another challenge is community support with the changing demographics. Again, this is not unique to Cape, but we've got declining enrollments. We've got, over time, potentially more people living in town without children in schools, not connected intimately the way that people are when their children are in schools, and how to have the community appreciate, know, and support what's going on in the schools, I think is a challenge that most communities in Maine have these days. I think trying to figure out how to get the community in the schools, and not just to get in for show and tell, but to really maybe have a role to play in bringing their expertise and their interest into helping enrich the education for children, to really generally bring them in a meaningful way. I think that would be quite a challenge, but doable. So that was just meant to kind of grease the skids. I don't know if anybody I asked the administration if they want to join in. Please, does anybody else want to throw out some ideas of things that are challenging?
Well, I want to throw out, because I think of myself as the money lady, is the money. I mean, based on what we're hearing from the Capitol and the governor, with his change in budget proposal, he's looking at changing the subsidy formula quite a bit. And based on everything I've seen is that it looks like our subsidy will be reduced. So that's one of the challenges we're looking at. And a lot of the challenges that Howard already talked about are always offset about how much they're going to cost. Some of them don't cost anything, as Howard pointed out, but some of the other, they do. And yes, the teachers need this support, and we need additional custodians, but that does cost money. So it's like a teeter-totter. You want this, but you don't want to increase taxes outrageously and stuff. So you're always going, how are we going to do this? So I just wanted to point that out there. We've been working on this teeter-totter, and we will present it to you in a couple of weeks. But that's definitely a challenge that we all have to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
I would just mention a couple things, and really I'm hesitant to sort of come after that. All those things, all of which I agree with, and wonderfully well stated. One you didn't mention is in the realm of technology specifically, changes in the MILTI program. What Kevin just mentioned.
Right, good point.
reminded me of it.
Good point.
So it appears from the tea leaves that the support for the MILTI program, the Maine Learning Technology Initiative, which supports laptops for students in 7th and 8th grade and faculty high school laptops and other technology initiatives, is maybe eroding away. How quickly? I don't think any of us particularly knows, but that definitely creates some challenges. I wanted to piggyback on what Howard said about extended learning opportunities. I think we've been piloting some things for the last couple of years. There's more room to be gained in that time. In fact, just yesterday at the faculty meeting, faculty were brainstorming possibilities how we can do a better job transitioning kids into the high school and probably most importantly, transitioning kids out of the high school. So that senior year is not seen as more of the same, but is seen as something, there are some new and different and exciting elements to it.
Mhm.
And I think there's some good things, there's wonderful things what we do with kids in all grade levels, but I'm not sure that most of our kids would say that senior year is new and exciting and different necessarily. And then I did want to just throw out one fact, particularly, and Howard mentioned the complexity of kids. You know, I have become increasingly aware since sort of taking on the hat of coordinating the 504 program at the high school. And I think that what's happened with 504 numbers is indicative of some increasing challenges. Those numbers have virtually doubled in the last 3 or 4 years. A few years ago, our 504 numbers were in the low 20s, and we're now in the high 30s. So it makes a big difference. And so I wanted to put that specific out there to sort of
Thank
put some
you.
flesh on that idea.
Thank you.
I think I want to just piggyback on a couple things that you said, Howard, starting with at the elementary level, the RTI support that is woefully inadequate at Pond Cove. And as Howard mentioned, we've looked at our comparable districts, and it's astounding how much support that they have compared to us. And I think the Pond Cove staff does an incredible job, given what we have. But I just, as we move forward into making budgetary decisions and knowing what we value, I hope that, we all can take a really close look at that, and that need is really huge. And it's not just academic, it's social and emotional as well, and we're really looking at the whole child and how much integrated support that we can give them. That's a big one. And I won't get political, but with what you said about right now what's happening in the world, we have started having conversations at Pond Cove this week about our responsibility on ensuring that these children do not, what they're being exposed to, what our responsibility as a school is to make sure that we are reassuring them, but also that we are providing great role models. We are helping them to be kind, to be able to make corrections and do things in a restorative way, and know that it's okay to make mistakes, but at the same time know what's acceptable and what's respectful and how we treat one another. There is the week of February 13th is International Random Acts of Kindness Week. We're going to be celebrating that, but that's more kind of almost like a rebooting kindness way. So we're not going to just be kind for a week, but we're going to use that as a kind of an impetus to really kick things off. But it's on everyone's mind, and we feel a huge responsibility with our children.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to jump in too. This budget process has been really exciting because I'm trying to figure out what we can do when we talk about making teachers feel confident in their abilities to reach out to students, how we can empower teachers. And some of the things that I'm looking at doing is giving teachers the confidence to reach all students. We have to look at education not just academically anymore. We're really focused on test scores. But you have all these kids who can't even sit in a seat, so how are they supposed to access education? And you have all these teachers that are supposed to educate these students, and they don't have the tools. So we've had a lot of discussions in how we use the resources that we have and kind of redesign job descriptions, and also what we're doing right now, what we need more of, what we can use less of, and are we really getting the most bang for our buck out of what we're using right now? And so that's kind of the direction, at least, that special ed is taking in the great context of the budget. So it's been actually pretty exciting to look at how we can move pieces and look not just for the next year, but look how these kids are going to be affected K-12 and what we put in now being more of a long-lasting transition for them. So I'm pretty excited about it.
And if I could add, the conversations we've had, I think, continue to come back to a few themes that I keep hearing is that are we being efficient at the same time that we're being effective? And I'll echo that idea. in doing that, are we being efficient and effective in meeting the needs of all of our learners, whether they're the highest performing students, whether they're our most struggling learners, is trying to find ways to continually look at what we do, and again, are we being as efficient as possible? Are we being as effective as possible? And some of those things are cost neutral, and there's no budget implications, and those have been important parts of our conversation. But a lot of the conversations that we have about meeting the needs of all learners, and when some of those things begin to start to smack up against values that we hold, or values of the district, it makes for hard conversations, and you get on that teeter-totter, and they're hard. And I think that's a lot of probably what we'll be talking to you about, is really, you'll hear a lot of those struggles of, we really want to do right by meeting the needs of all of our learners, but in a way that's as effective and efficient with what we have as possible.
I just want to pipe in and say I really deeply appreciate what you all have said as far as the challenges within our district, and thank you for that honesty in that. There's one piece that I haven't heard, and I'm sure it's just simply an undercurrent, and I'd like to surface it, and that is the critical thinking skills that come along with all of that, and understanding the consequences of our actions, and the justice and values and character building is also an important part of curriculum building. And I said, I'm sure it's there. I would just like to surface that and comment on that, because I see it as a dire need in our society today.
And one other thing that I is inherent really in all of these, but I think it does warrant being highlighted, especially when we think about, the characteristics of exceptional and innovative, is our evaluation system. We need to make sure that we're doing this because we want to be exceptional, because we want to be innovative. We've got to strengthen that, and we've got to do, all we can to make it serve us, serve all of us.
I'd offer some brief comments. I certainly appreciate the picture that you painted. And I think it's important to paint that full picture. We're going to have some really tough choices, and we ought to see what the full.
We will.
And I'm hoping that we can engage our community broadly and see what that is. I would say also, in terms of the time that we're in, I grew up in a relatively turbulent time in a relatively turbulent place, and that's actually a real opportunity. It's an opportunity to lead. It's an opportunity to show your values and to learn real lessons about what your government and your civics and all those things are like, how you engage in respectful conversations back and forth, and getting a chance to see that evolve over time. There's a chance to lead. And on some of the issues that we're facing much more granularly, there is some opportunity within the state. For example, they are looking at how they're funding special ed costs. And there's an opportunity potentially to be part of that conversation. Because one of the things that drives overall increases in special ed costs, what really drives districts' challenges is infrequent, high-cost special ed kids. And they're sort of randomly distributed. This is really an insurance problem, which is why it makes much more sense as a state issue than as a district issue, because you don't know when you're going to get it. And so, and there is some movement afoot, I think, in the legislature to look at how you handle those costs, and we could be part of that conversation and help offer a solution that will help all districts, including our own, in terms of how you manage those unusual costs, of which we bear a significant portion.
So I have a question. I go back to one of the very first comments that you made this evening, that there's very little extra money, that most of it is going to the teachers and the salary and the increase in salaries, and that there's there's not a lot of leeway after that. And I just wonder how other districts do it. You know, you say that Pond Cove is severely lacking in their support for teachers compared to other districts. Well, other districts have teachers that they're paying their salary and they're giving them a raise as well. How is it that we seem to not, and I don't say this critically, it's completely out of curiosity, how is it seen, or at least my perspective from hearing everything, seems like we're in tougher shape? And maybe that's a warped viewpoint, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like, I mean, I know budgets are hard for every district, and I know there's cuts that need to be made, but I'm just curious if there's been curiosity in questioning why it seems like we might be in a little bit of a tougher spot. Does that make sense, my question?
Yeah. I'm not
Why
s-
are other districts able to afford? Is it because we have a large population in the community that is not so strongly connected to the schools? Do we not have the support to raise taxes? Do other towns raise
Not
their
a lot of
taxes
business.
higher
Industry.
Not a lot of business or industry.
for the taxes,
Mhm.
for the sales
I think
tax?
that's huge.
So we don't have as much money to pull from.
We have no
We don't
mall, we
have-
have no strip malls,
Got
we
it.
have
We have no Audi dealership or Walmart.
Right. Which are paying the taxes.
That's
Give
the
you an
goal.
example, when in Falmouth, which frankly has huge support, primary RTI, huge, and has for a long time, we used to be able to approach budget with about an estimate of 350,000 more for the school budget, just because of new homes and businesses. So you'd start on that plus level, even before you knew what your general purpose aid was gonna come in. And we took some big hits up there too, mind you, but there was always this pretty good move forward just from doing nothing except new housing starts and new businesses. So that was a gift, truly, and that allowed some of that infrastructure to grow over time, and it increased the budget over time, and we did have our critics about that, but it hardly ever had huge tax impact.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's a different story here. And I think
There's
it-
nothing
yeah.
unique about the reality that salaries and benefits for all your employees, not just teachers, but all your employees are
Yeah.
the lion's share of your budget. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Some districts have different pay scales, some have different health benefit arrangements, some have larger or smaller class sizes, some of them have, place priority on certain programs or not. I mean, so that's, but all those things don't add up to, they don't come close to the cost of salary and benefits for all your employees. I mean, we are primarily personnel.
Yeah, and I think the other given, however, if I could suggest, is I know it leaves us very little room, as what Kathy said, for how much can we afford to add. What we sometimes have to do is be brave and look at what we have and see if we need to make some changes
Right,
within
what can we let
that
go of?
structure.
Yeah.
What, as Jess was saying, reallocate in X direction. And do we have some areas where we need to look hard? Are we perhaps slightly overstaffed in a couple things that we could divert? I mean, that's the hard question stuff, but it's gonna have to be asked, I think, given some of the challenges right now.
Speak to that. May I speak to that?
Please,
Yeah,
please.
we will definitely give you in your packet the trend of enrollments overall. We'll also give you, as best we can, for elementary and middle school student-teacher ratios. We can do that. You can see what we have there, which are, what we use is your board policy on desired class size, and you can see how that lines up. High school is a bit different, but we can show you, for example, courses that are offered that maybe are exceptionally high or exceptionally low, and give you some idea about that. But I think that our feeling is that we don't see any obvious places where reductions are justified. I mean, if there's a change in of thinking on the part of the board about programs that we offer, well, then that's what we'll find out in the budget process. But right now, we're feeling that what we have this year is, there aren't any obvious places where we just think that we could consolidate. I mean, and I would hope to especially look at those when we have retirements. So we can just, rather than lay somebody off, we can just absorb that. And we do have a couple of retirements this year, and we may get a few more, and those are opportunities to really ask ourselves, are we willing to go past the guidelines for class size in order to absorb that? Well, we can look at that. We'll talk about that.
I think traditionally, over the years since I've been on the school board, we've always looked at sort of a very bare bones, needs-based budget. There's never really ever been places that we could easily point to. Yeah.
So, would there be a point, another portion of this where we don't only talk about challenges, but we do talk about the assets that we, the things that we have? Because those are what we're leveraging, and those are what we're spending that money on that we have. And part of the process of justifying the budget is two things. One of which is talking about spending money on preserving those assets of, and I mean that in the broadest sense, that we have. Because if, whether it's human capital or other sorts of institutional capital, if you don't take care of it, it will deteriorate, and that's costly. And so understanding what those are is really important, and that's the same. And along with that, it's the same thing I was been saying before: is we need to be very clear about we're doing these things, and here's why we're doing them, and what we expect to see out of that, and because that's part of how we're going to spend our money. And those are the two pieces that I think underlie eventually the story of the full whatever budget we're going to put forward.
If the board would like that list, we can generate that as well. I thought about this earlier, because I've had some parents in the community say to me that when they moved to the area, they were looking at the usually two school districts, one of them being Cape Elizabeth, and then there would be another district, and it would be one of a couple that you can imagine who they are. And
Let's just say X.
I think that oftentimes what people look at when they're from away and they're trying to make a decision about, okay, we can make it work in one of these communities, why would we pick Cape Elizabeth? I'm going to guess that part of it is test scores. You just go and look, you can get online and find out, oh, this looks good. I think, though, that once you get past that, there are other really important things that matter, and you may not know about it when you make the decision where you're going to live, but I'll give you some examples. One of them that matters a lot is dropout rate. It's a big, big deal. To me, it's huge. And it's an indicator about, and so what are all the things that contribute to having what you have is an incredibly low dropout rate. That would matter to me. And I could run a list of other things. I think people would say they want to know that their child is happy at school, that they enjoy coming to school. I'm serious. I mean, right? So, I mean, I think that some of the things that, and we can point to programs that we offer, but I mean, another, honestly, that's a really big indicator, the percent of children that are involved in one or more before or after school programs. That's a huge indicator of a school or a school system. And what are those things that you offer? But I mean, we can do some of that if it would be helpful, but it isn't all a straight line.
No. And I think we've done a nice job tonight of covering challenges, and so going forward, we probably need to circle back around to the major teaching and learning considerations, and the just getting back to, like the student demographics and the staffing impact, new programs, that sort of thing that we're looking at before we get our budget binders and try to walk through that and that organization. But I think people have done a really nice job tonight, and
Good.
we thank you very much, and I thank everybody for participating in this discussion.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.